What is up, everybody? I hope you're all doing well today, and welcome back to Last Epoch. It's been a little while since my last Epoch video, but with the new season starting, I've been playing quite a bit, and I was jumping back in and starting to make new builds with new items and just having a lot of fun, and I wanted to bring you the Sacred Light Warpath build that I have been working on. And this would be the leveling build version of it. And before I dive into talking about it entirely, I do want to specify and be a little more specific on what I mean when I say a leveling build, just so that you know what I'm talking about and you know what to expect out of this build / build guide, whatever you want to call it. So when I say leveling guide, what I mean is the build that will take you from, level 1, doing the whole story mode, and then all the way up through the final boss of the story, and then through all of the initial run of the monoliths. Just in case you don't know, you have to beat the final boss of each of these monoliths, collect your little blessing bonus from each, all the way up to the top here, the level 90s. So once you have beaten all of those, you will be able to choose the option to play the level 100 empowered monoliths, which essentially lets you play any of these monoliths, but instead of the slowly ascending level of them, they will just all be level 100 with 100 corruption, which is the end game scaling, stat that you would use to push higher XP and loot drop gains, and it makes the game more challenging. So running through this for the first time is kind of like your introduction to the end game, and then once you've beaten them, then you have the level 100 empowereds, and that's kind of where the base of the end game takes place. So to me, leveling build is getting you through this initial set of monoliths, and then getting you set up to be able to do the level 100 corruption base level of the empowered, true end game. This build can totally do that. As you saw that little clip from me playing a map at the beginning, that was in the level 100 corruption empowered monoliths. It was very easy. I have not had any struggles with this build. It's been a lot of fun, and it's been very smooth. It was also probably the single easiest campaign run I've had. Not that the campaign is particularly difficult at all, but this was super fast and super easy, especially considering the main item that really makes it pop off is something you can equip from, I want to say it's like level 6, but we'll get to that when we get there. I just wanted to briefly explain what I mean by leveling build, but let us dive into it instead of listening to me yammer on. So let's start with the skills. So we first start with Warpath, which is what I used from as soon as I unlocked it. I did end up moving the skill points around in Warpath a little bit, just based on where I was at the time and, mana sustain, some things like that. But essentially, you take the extra area, you want to hit things easily, more area makes it happen. I took all 5 points into the channel cost, as the channeling cost, upkeep, and mana regen is probably the biggest issue with this whole build, so you want to mitigate that. I took all 5 points in this. Then you have Reckless Spin, which further decreases the channel cost, but also reduces your elemental resistances. This one I would leave empty until maybe later on when you have much higher resistances, where they're overcapped, so that this 30% does not bring you under your normal 75 cap of resistances. So this would be something you'd add a lot later, or just whenever you can. I was able to, I want to say right near the end of the story mode, I was able to take this because of my resistances being quite a bit higher than 75, which thankfully isn't too hard to do on the Paladin. Then you come over here, 1 point in the Speed, Quicksilver Wind. Then we have 1 in Gorebringer. Then we have the 1 point in Earth Scorcher, which changes it all to Fire Scaling. Then we take every point in Path of Heavens. While spinning, you have additional spell damage, plus 50 at max. And then, one of the important stats here, Winds of Justice. While spinning, you have a chance to cast Smite each second on a nearby enemy, and it does consume Smite's mana cost. And when you have all 4 points, it's 100% chance per second, so it's just a auto cast. It's fantastic, but this is also where a lot of the mana difficulties come in, depending on how you have yours built. I like the way mine's built, but it is very mana hungry, so this could be a little difficult, especially if you don't have a lot of the channel cost reducers and a lot of mana regen. As you can see, the actual hit of Warpath doesn't do a whole lot of damage. That's fine though. Warpath is basically just acting as a proc for Winds of Justice and one of the new unique items. Then we have our Holy Aura. Because we are a Paladin, we take all 5 points into Shelter from the Storms, Elemental Resistances, and Endurance %. We take all 4 points in Vital Boon for the health regeneration. We take the 1 point into Purification for the Poison Resist, as I hate building Poison Resist, and this just gives me free Poison Resist. We take 2 points in Redemption, increased healing effectiveness. Then we take, let's see, what was it, 1 point in the block effectiveness. This was kind of a extra point gained from a skill boost, whatever you want to call them, level boost from an item. This is an extra, so not important to take early. I took the 1 ignite chance, all 5 points into Burning Blows, which just increases global fire damage. That's great for us. And then both points into the Raya's Fury. The Holy Aura grants Fire Pen. Fire Pen's really nice, so this is an important one to max out. Then we have Smite. I feel like you could probably build Smite in several different ways. I do have at least 1 extra point, and so I'll just show you how I have it built right now, but I'm sure you can tweak this, do it a little bit differently, and probably get similar results. So the way I have it is 2 points into the Blinding Flash for the required, all 5 into Sacrifice, which gives you a 250% more damage scaling, though it consumes health, 5 points into the Atonement to make that health cost completely negated. We could probably get away with not putting points here, as I have a lot of HP regen, but it's been fairly comfortable, so I haven't messed around with not having the full health cost reduction yet. Then we take the Fissure. Smite causes a fissure underneath the target, dealing fire damage to enemies who stand on it. Fissure costs 10 mana, lasts 3 seconds, and has a ½ second cooldown. So this is really nice for just dropping more damage on top of anything you're fighting, as the Smite will hit a target and then spread out with this Fissure, just kind of giving you more AoE clear, but also letting you stack extra damage on single targets, because you do get at least several Fissures available at once. Like you're not capped to 1 Fissure active at a time. You can have at least several, so this is just stacking damage, which is fantastic. And then down here, I'd have 2 points into Fissure deals more damage, just to try and increase that tick damage a little bit. And then over here, we put some more points into Holy Fire. The Smite has a chance to ignite. Not a big deal, but it is helpful. And then we have the Conflagration. Smite hits deal more damage to ignited enemies, another 60% more damage. We're not building heavily around Ignite, but we ignite often enough that it is very rare that you're not hitting something ignited, therefore you're very often getting this other 60% damage scaling. For a little bit, I did have more points into the Fissure area and the Fissure damage instead of using these over here. I did find that, at least for me, that using this setup as it is was a little bit more single target damage than investing more in the Fissure. I kind of liked having a little bit of both. Again, I'm sure you could use either of these exclusively and it would be totally effective. I just liked a little bit of extra clear from Fissures for small targets that you're not actively hitting with Smite. And then I liked the extra points here just to slightly increase that single target damage. But again, I don't think there's a wrong answer in this portion of Smite's tree. And then we take Sigils of Hope. All 5 points into Empowering Sigils, increases damage per sigil 25%. All 3 points into Decree of Flame, which each sigil gives you 3 flat fire damage to spells and melee attacks, just everything. And then we take all 5 into Iron Sigils, which increases your endurance threshold. Then we take all 5 into Enduring Hope, make the sigils last longer, plus 10 seconds. Then we have +1 to max sigils up here in the tetragram. Then we take Meditation. Sigils now only affect you, but provide twice as much health regen. If you were really trying to play in co-op with someone and build off each other, you might consider not taking this, but I play solo most of the time, so for me this was a no-brainer. And then up here, I took all 3 points into Sign of the Guardian, block chance per sigil, 3%, and then 45 block effectiveness per sigil. I started building into block a little later on. I actually started this build as a dual wield setup, but I just found that I really wanted some easy defenses, so I went back to a sword and shield setup, and it's been very comfortable. I'm sure you could do something with a dual wield setup to get even more damage, but I wanted to be fairly tanky and not worry about falling over constantly in the empowered monoliths, so I went with some extra block. And then, just as a final little extra skill, we're using Judgment, and we are coming up here, taking 4 points into Sanctified Serenity, which increases the Consecrated Ground's healing effectiveness, which does translate to damage for it, on top of adding to the healing effect. You take all 5 points into the Lingering Force, Consecrated Ground lasts longer, and then up here we take Anointed, which makes Consecrated Ground turn into a Consecrated Aura, so it stays around you the whole time. Let me show you that really fast. So you slam with Judgment and you get this extra aura. It's just more damage while you're using Warpath, and more healing, more damage. It's really nice. We're not over-invested into the Judgment and Consecrated Aura, but like I said, it's just more healing and more damage output while you're sitting on top of enemies using Warpath, so it's a very no-brainer skill. I love it. We come down here, increase the area. I only have 2 points in it, as I really didn't see a need to try and take the AoE much larger than my Warpath, as I'm constantly trying to hit things with Warpath. So we went ahead and just took the 2. So we take 2 points into Divine Destruction. Judgment hits and Consecrated Ground deal more damage against enemies at high health. Not a big deal, just a little extra damage to stack in at the end. We take 3 points into Swift Verdict, which increases the cooldown recovery and the mana efficiency. This one you definitely want to max. In fact, the way I would go with this one is immediately go up this tree, make it the aura, and then come down here, make the AoE bigger, take all your cooldown, and then grab the Consecrated Ground deals more damage. And if you happen to have extra points through either gear or just, well, in this case, the 1 leftover point to put, that's when I would add to the Divine Destruction. I wouldn't start with this one. I would take the route as follows. Go up, down to the left, and then down to the right. So that is my skill setup. And as you saw in the demonstration, it's a lot of spinning, auto-hitting things, hitting the Judgment, getting the Consecrated Aura for more healing and then just more damage while you're using Warpath on enemies. I do use Lunge to move around. Because of having the auto cast and wanting to stack it, I don't have any specialization for the move skill, hence why I've used Lunge instead of the Shield Rush, though I do prefer Shield Rush. This one was just a lot easier to use as is, and so I took that one. And it's nice and easy just to jump between mobs and whatnot. Not bad. Let us now quickly go over my passives. There's a lot of flexibility within these passives. I'm sure this could be min-maxed even further than I have it. I just really haven't reworked it a whole lot after picking what I thought I wanted for it, and it's been fine. But regardless, we have all 8 into Juggernaut, Strength, Fire, and Void Resist. All 8 into Fearless, which is Vitality and Health Regen. 1 point into Stalwart for the block effectiveness, but more importantly for the 3% block chance that does not scale, hence only getting 1 point. 5 into Relentless for the increased damage, stun avoidance, and the stun immunity upon hitting 5 points. Or stun immunity for longer after being stunned. Sorry, not a complete stun immunity there. Then we have Armor Clad, which is just armor and less damage taken from nearby enemies. You could easily put more points in this, and that would be fantastic. I just kind of stopped right here, called it good. Then added 2 points into Blade Master for the extra attack speed. Easily another one I'll probably put a few more points into just to increase the Warpath attack speed, which helps with something else I'll mention later. Then in the Paladin tree, we take all 8 into Conviction, which is increased physical fire and lightning, and then also physical fire pen. This is great, a lot of damage, love it. Then we take all 8 into Defiance, which is attunement and 24 all elemental resistances, also fantastic. 1 into Honor for the block, chance, stun avoidance, and effectiveness. All 10 points into Heaven Fire for the spell damage while holding a shield. 5 points into the health and increased healing effectiveness. Another one that if you didn't feel like you needed something else, you could very comfortably dump more into this. More health is always good. More healing effectiveness just keeps you topped off more and adds damage to the consecrated aura, so never a bad idea to put more points here. Took 1 point into Phoenix Strike, which is the melee ignite chance. A couple points into the Raya's Strength, which is strength and fire damage on a recent melee hit. So you hit something, and then for 4 seconds after that, you will gain this 12% increased fire damage. Then we take 4 points in Dedication, which is attunement and mana regen. Another one that this one you'll want to kind of base around where your gear is at. So like if you found a lot of mana regen on gear and you're not struggling, maybe don't waste points here. Is the only real benefit at that point, is a little bit of attunement. But this one you'll just have to feel out for yourself based on your own gear. I have a couple points in it right now where I have it's comfortable. I could probably drop 2 points in this and probably still have enough mana regen right now, but I like to make sure I do. So I'm leaving it as is right now. Then we take all 8 into Sanctuary Guardian, extra armor while holding a shield, and spell damage while holding a shield. 1 point into Faith Armor, increased armor, and critical strike avoidance. Then we have 1 point into Shield Wall, which is block chance, health gained on block, but you cannot dodge. Doesn't matter, we're not building dodge anyways. Then 3 points into Prayer Aegis, which is health, endurance threshold, and haste on heal when below endurance threshold. Another one that's not really bad to have extra points in. Health and endurance threshold are great. On this build I do have maxed endurance %, so any threshold you can get is fantastic. Then we have 5 points into Reverence of Duality, as it gives you a little bit increased health, increased damage, increased healing effectiveness, and your increased mana. This is just a little bit of everything, and it's very nice, and I have a hard time not putting a lot of points in this, as it just kind of increases a little bit of everything about the character. So it's a very tempting one for me to dump points into, but I did stop at 5 for now, as I am level, I want to say 82, maybe 83 at this point. And then 3 point into the Light of Raya, which is increased fire damage, increased lightning damage, and a little move speed. I didn't overinvest in this, as I'm really only benefiting from the fire and move speed, but still not a bad damage buff. And that is it for the Paladin passives. The last 5 I did slot over here in the Forge Guard for the strength and the extra melee attack speed, as that was strength's a good scaler, and the extra melee attack speed is just very convenient for the Warpath setup. So that's where I have those points. I might also, I think my next point I will probably put when I hit 83, I believe it is. Yeah, 83. I'll be putting that in Steel Aegis just to get 3% more block chance. So as you can see, I'm like 5 enemy kills away from getting this one. But I'll put 1 point here for that block chance. Nothing else past that probably. But that is it for the passives, where I am currently at level 82. And now let us go look at some gear. So the most important piece of gear in this is the Polaris's Sacred Light, a level 6 one-handed sword that does as follows: +1 melee damage per 2 attunement, and +1 spell damage per 2 strength. 44% chance to cast Smite on melee hit up to 3 times per second, and if you're just manually casting Smite, 35% chance to cast it at 2 additional targets when you cast it directly, plus 2 to all attributes. So there is some variation to the rolls here. As you can see, the chance on melee hit to cast Smite ranges from 32 to 46%. Mine is at a 44%, which is almost as good as it can be. And as you saw, all this does is when you hit something with Warpath or any melee skill, it has a chance to also cast Smite at random targets on top of the built-in Warpath node that does give you that additional cast of Smite that costs. The casts from the sword do not cost mana, so you get a lot of auto shooting of that Smite through the sword itself, and then you get the extra shooting of it from Warpath. So it does end up being quite a bit of Smite procs, which is awesome. You could probably drop the entire Smite node on Warpath, but I just like to have the extra casts of it, as that is my main source of damage. But the sword, the other main thing it does is the spell damage for strength, so you can scale basically all of your damage and your armor through scaling strength. I do not have as much as I would like. As you can see, I've only got 42 and then only 14 attunements, so I'm definitely not stat scaling as hard as I could and should be. It just hasn't worked out very much in the gear, but that is something you could try and stat dump a lot more into, as with the strength you get increased armor and the flat damage to Smite through the sword, and just a little more extra damage to your Warpath, which we're not scaling around Warpath, but extra damage is never a bad thing. So this one is very convenient, and this is very important. You can also use this sword, if you didn't hear me the first time, from level 6. So you can quite easily start playing this build from level 6. Obviously, it's not going to be the same as it is at the end of Monoliths, but it is very, very nice. The other important piece of gear we have is a new item also called Orion's Sun Seal. +2 to Sigils of Hope, so +2 to the skill, plus 10 seconds to the Sigil of Hope duration. That does range from 6 to 12, and the plus to skills is 1 to 2. Then you get increased healing effectiveness, increased armor, and most importantly, every 10 seconds, if you are above half mana, you cast Sigils of Hope and consume 73% of its mana cost. So Sigils of Hope was that really nice buff we had earlier that adds a lot. Now, that skill is usually annoying because you have to sit here and auto cast it every 5 to 10 seconds. Very inconvenient. I like to 2-button or 1-button build as much as possible, so having to constantly use this buff and drain a lot of mana in between attacking anything is very obnoxious, and this ring simply automates that, and I love it. This ring is fantastic, great addition to the game, and it does offer just flat elemental resistances as the ring's base stats. And as you can see, I have been using the new season mechanic, the Nemesis or whatever they call it, in order to get some extra stats. The extra stats on the ring are pretty nice. I got stun avoidance and some increased health regen. Obviously, pushing later in the game, you'd want even more specific, more necessary stats here, but I just took these because why would I not take the extra stats on them? And at least for the ring, these are pretty helpful. The ones I rolled for the sword are kind of useless. I mean, we have 31 increased melee damage, which whoopee, like more damage is cool, but we're not really focused on the Warpath damage, so it's not that big a deal, but whatever, I'll take it. And then obviously the increased necrotic damage is completely wasted. So definitely be looking to get a better sword than I have, and I will also be looking to get a better one. The previous sword I got only rolled increased damage for minions, so haven't been very lucky on the extra rolls on the sword. For the helmet, we're using the endurance threshold and increased fire damage base, which I got raw strength, increased fire damage, increased ignite duration, a lot of physical resistance, and then critical strike avoidance. And then we've got an amulet with fizz and necrotic resistance, some fire pen, increased fire damage, health and stun avoidance, and then necrotic resistance. Then we have a shield, which you want to try and make sure you have a shield with a high block chance, because again, we are trying to use some decent block here to mitigate some damage. Then it's got a high endurance roll and high poison resist. Then we've got a separate ring, which is vitality and health regen, mana regen, increased healing effectiveness, block chance and block effectiveness, and some void resist to cap that out. We have a belt with elemental damage over time, mana regen, increased health, and flat health. This is not a great belt. This is definitely a piece I've been trying to improve on. That and the ring, if you couldn't see, I was working with some different ones over here, and these were just the two best ones I got. We have a decent pair of gloves. It's armor, mana, and mana regen base. 14% increased melee attack speed, strength, endurance, health, and then I got one of from the season mechanic, the 13 elemental resistances on top of that. Not a bad pair of gloves, and I've still got a little forging potential, so when I hit, I think it's level 63 or 83 here. Yeah, see, I'll be able to increase my strength even further on that, hit tier 5 as soon as I hit level 83. So in a couple kills. So that'll be a couple extra points of strength. Got a pair of boots, same thing from the Nemesis season mechanic. Armor, move speed, cold resist. It has a vitality, move speed, health, and increased health percent. A big roll on critical strike avoidance at 74%, and then some flat LE resistances as the extra stat. I do not love the base stats of like this base item type, but I could not turn down vitality, health, and a lot of extra health through the purple affixes there, the health increased, and then the crit strike avoidance. This single item almost caps me on crit strike avoidance, being a 74% chance, so this was kind of huge. You may not get an item with that much crit strike avoidance, so you might have to work it into other gear, but I got it on a big roll on the boots, so that was awesome. Then right now I'm using Code of the Erased, which reduces the melee attack mana cost, which further helps our mana issues. Which is base item is +1 to sentinel skills. That's how I got that 1 extra point on all skills. Increased armor, and then 23% of armor mitigation also applies to damage over time. The extra things it rolled are +2 to rebuke, which I'm not using, but it does give 25 increased armor, which is awesome. Void damage is wasted, cold resist is mostly wasted, and then fire resist, which is very small and mostly wasted. As you can see, I'm way overcapped on cold resist because of this one as well. Even using Warpath, I'm still way overcapped, so not a ton of extra stats on that, but the extra armor's nice. Again, this is a piece I will probably rotate through and try to find an even better one that rolls better extra stats on it. But again, leveling build, not minimax 3000 corruption slayer build here. And then idols is going to be fairly easy and fairly specific. I'm using 4, which is as many as I can slot here, of the large idols that give increased damage to smite, as high a percent as you can get, and then also the increased fire damage. So these are just going to add a ton of damage. So I have 1, 2, this one is even better at 45% to smite, 26 fire. And then we've got one over here, which is a 44 to smite, 19 to fire. And then this one is a 36 with a little bit of dot damage on top of it. That's another thing you'll want to improve, is just as you go through and you're playing through the monoliths, is try to get better or buy or find better rolls on your increased smite, increased fire damage, just because there's a lot of power sitting in these 4 slots right here. Then I have a little ignite chance with a little fire damage. Then I have increased warpath area and increased armor, and then another increased warpath area and increased armor. So the idols are fairly simple. I do play in the market league, as I like to make a build, get it all set up, play in monoliths for a bit, and then try something new. I do rotate through builds a lot, so I like market, trade league, whatever you want to call it. So I did buy 3 of these. I think I want to say this one I found myself. The other 3 here I purchased just to fill the slots because I knew this is roughly the stats I wanted. And you would want this to match the other 3 with the increased fire instead of the dot damage. But either way, a lot of power here. Very convenient. And that is it for the idols. And then very briefly before we wrap up here, I'll just kind of go over my stats page here to show you where we're at with everything. So we got 24 vitality, 42 strength, which will go up as soon as I hit 83 and can upgrade the gloves again. Then I've got 14 attunement and just the 2 to dex and intelligence. We're sitting at 1618 health with 284 health regen per second, which does go up even further if you actually manually cast Holy Aura. Brings it up to a little over 300. Fantastic. 31 move speed, which will go up as soon as I hit 83 and can upgrade the boots further. 187 mana with just shy of 16 mana per second. Hitting this 16 has made it perfectly comfortable because, again, because of that ring auto casting Sigils of Hope, we do want to stay above half mana as often as possible, so it's auto casting for us. I finally got that, sitting at about the 15 to 16 mana regen. We have capped resistances across the board, though Void is very, very close. Thankfully, I rolled one of the, I think it was the belt I just rolled, and was able to get just enough Void resist on it to keep that capped as well. We have a 65 up to 68% block chance, just depending on how many of the sigils we have. Which obviously, going even further with that would be nice. I'll get another, how many percent is that? We'll get another 3% here once I get the next point. So we'll be sitting at, what would that be, 8, 9, 10, 11. So we'll be sitting at like 71% block chance, which not perfect, but not bad at all. Definitely takes the load off of some damage mitigation. And we're sitting at 4,312 armor, and then 1,700 stun avoidance, 1315 block effectiveness. Could stand to have more of this, but again, for me, the block is just a extra little layer to mitigate some of the damage and let health regen do the work. I don't think I need the block chance right now. Like, I'm perfectly tanky and surviving without it, even when I was still dual wielding. I just wanted to take the extra precaution and add some more protection so that I can move into the empowered monoliths at level 100 without having to worry about things one-shotting me all the time, you know, that kind of junk. So this is just extra, but I do think it is very helpful and will be very important moving higher up into the corruption tiers. And then down here, I won't bore you with all the little percent increased in stats. Defenses, though, we do have capped endurance percent at 60. We're sitting at 75. And then right now I have 665 endurance threshold when I have all sigils up, which is most of the time. So that just provides another nice layer of defense for all, let me see here when it's at 4. Yeah, so when it's at 4, it's almost half of our health. Not quite, but it's getting close. Maybe a little over a third of our health there. So bottom third is protected fairly well. So we really don't go down very easily, which is quite nice. And then we have 104% critical strike avoidance thanks to those boots. This is another thing that I don't usually build very heavily into, but I wanted to try and build for this so that if, you know, say you were copying me directly, so you would have an easier time moving into empowered monoliths as critical strikes from enemies start to get a lot more dangerous moving into the empowered monos. So I just wanted to try and actually build it this time and squeeze it into the build just to make it a lot tankier for me and therefore make it a lot tankier for you. Then we have a tiny bit of health gained on block. That's another stat that you could possibly scale well, you know, if you were getting a little bit more out of your block. Maybe drop a little health regen and instead do health on block. That would be perfectly fine too. I do think there is a lot of shifting and moving around of the parts you could do with this build. I wouldn't look at what I have and, you know, consider it as you have to build exactly like this or it won't work. I think there's a lot of flexibility in the setup and could be done in a bunch of different ways. But this build and overall setup has been a lot of fun. It's just very satisfying to Warpath around through everything and have them just getting auto-bombed by Smite. It is a lot of fun. I think these 2 new items that they added this league, or season, are just phenomenal, and I really love them. And for me, it made Paladin, like, totally worth playing again. So this one has been a lot of fun. And I really can't think of anything else I need to share with you guys. Oh, we should go over blessings really quick here. So, the blessings are not min-maxed. These are just the ones I picked from my first or second try rolls. So we have the huge idol drop rate, as I was kind of passively farming for, well, better idols or ones to sell. Over here we have health gain on block. I'm actually currently working on re-rolling that to see what else I can get. Up here we do have a good one with 18 health regen flat and 128 increased health regen. I definitely think that's worth trying to farm for here. That's a lot of HP regen, and it makes a big difference, especially stacked on top of all the other Paladin heals. You stay topped off a lot, and it's great. Up here we have just some percent necrotic resistance. I might try to re-roll this if I can afford to, but the extra resists for essentially free is quite nice. Up here we have the extra block chance and effectiveness. That one's pretty good. I definitely aim for that unless you see something else on the list that you desperately need more, but I liked having that. Up here we have suffix shard drop rate, and then over here we have 300, 299 armor while channeling. There might be better options, but I mean, that's 300 flat armor for something you're doing all of the time anyways, because you're almost always using Warpath, so that's just extra defenses. So that is what I've got for blessings currently, and obviously that's something that you can shift, upgrade, and change throughout running monoliths in your playtime. This is just what I've chosen for right now, and they've been fairly nice. Alright, well, I think that does cover everything about this build, at least that I can think of. Do let me know down in the comments if you've run something similar. New items, people tend to make builds with them a lot more often, so I'd be curious what you guys have done or how you have yours set up. If you see any improvements I could have made or could make very easily, again, definitely let me know down in the comments. I'm always open to learning something new and improving what I'm doing. Thank you very much for watching today. I appreciate your time, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.